Hi and welcome back again. Today I'm going to be working on 4 different junipers, and in the panning shots that I just showed you, you would have seen 4 trees, and there's something that is rather sneaky about them. They all have in common, and that is that they are all tanukis, which means that they are all dead trees or dead trunks to which I have attached living junipers. Depending on who you speak to, you will either find that the person is pro-tanuki or anti-tanuki, if there is such a thing. Some people don't like it. It is a bit of a cheat, and obviously that is what really the definition or the meaning of it is, tanuki. And but it is a way that you can quite rapidly get a convincingly old tree, and this is particularly true if you live in areas like I do in South Africa, where we don't really have access to very old yamadori, very old wild collected junipers. Certainly nothing like you would get in the US and Europe and other parts of the world, of Japan, of course. So we have to come up with a solution that is going to be able to produce you obviously won't be able to produce the same effect necessarily as a yamadori, but you can certainly achieve a convincing tree, and if it's done really well, I think it would be you'd be hard pressed to actually see that it was done as a graft and not as a real or as a wild grown tree. So I did a great episode on creating tanukis, or phoenix grafts as they're also called, with Brett Simon, and I'll put the link to that video in now, and you can take a look at that. And Brett really did a fantastic job of showing us how to put together a tanuki, the type of dead wood that you're looking at using, how to prepare it, and preparing the live plant that you're going to graft onto it or attach onto the dead tree. So I did these, and I actually wrote a blog about them. So that was about a little bit more than a year ago, I guess. And so now in today's session, I'm going to be doing a follow-up. In some areas, the cable ties that we used to attach the tree onto the dead wood has now started to bite in, so I need to remove that. And then also attaching the trees with the stainless steel screws, which will then be the permanent solution. And then I will also just be doing some very light basic structural wiring as well. But at this stage, it's really just getting the tree to grow as much as possible so that it can fill out, and any gaps between the live tree and the dead wood can fill up. You can't really see any wire bite in this area because I used hose which I cut in half and splayed open and covered the trunk with. So the areas where the cable ties are making contact has been protected. But there is another area higher up on the tree that I can show you where there has been some wire bite. And in the other trees I didn't protect them, so you'll see the wire bite is that much more severe. So in this spot you can see the wire bite is quite visible, and it will be very visible when I remove the cable ties. Now you'll also notice that this copper wire, which I used in winter to wire this branch down, and in fact the other structural branches on this tree, you can see that the wire has also started to bite in here. But for the moment I'm going to leave it. It might add to the character as well, but I would like to bend some of these other branches out of the way. It's also very encouraging to see that there is new juvenile growth that is popping out on the trunk, and these will become useful to increase the structural ramification or the amount of branches that I have to work with. Of course, one could graft. This is great because it's already growing out of the trunk. And it's obviously then going to be the same foliage as everywhere else on the tree. So of course you can't just go through the tree and cut off all the cable ties simultaneously. You will be risking the tree popping off from the deadwood. So we're just going to systematically move up the tree from the bottom to the top and affix it to the deadwood using screws. So I'm going to be using stainless steel chipboard screws, in fact. The reason I'm using stainless steel is really just so that I don't want something to rust and then break, because obviously this is the permanent fix, so this is going to have to last for many years. I've heard rumors and comments about iron poisoning or different things that you can't use normal screws, that it has to be stainless steel or brass even. I'm not so sure about that, but yeah, given the reason as to why I want to use stainless steel. And so I'm using some, these are 4mm, I believe, and so I'm trying to use something that's not too thin that it might snap, because obviously there could be a lot of tension on the screw as the live part of the tree wants to maybe push away. So you want to use something thick enough that can't happen, but you also don't want to go too thick. I'm also using countersunk, and I'm going to in fact drill a little bit of a countersunk in the live part of the tree, just so that I can nestle in that. I'm also going to be using a drill. I'll show that to you now. As I mentioned, I'm going to be using a drill, and this is just to put a pilot hole through the live part of the tree, or through the live tree, and then into the deadwood below that. And that's just to help prevent any cracking or splitting of the tree as I put the screw in. And then, as I mentioned, I'm also going to countersunk the hole, and that is just to get the screw as close to flush with the surrounding live tissue as I possibly can. Yeah, I think I've explained everything that I'm about to do, so let's get started. So this first screw is going to be quite important because that is attaching the lower part of the tree onto the deadwood, and so it's important that we secure this one first, and to do it very well. Now we're going to drill the pilot hole. That was the pilot hole. Now we're going to drill the countersunk hole, and now finally we can insert the screw. So you can use a power tool, or you can do it by hand, whatever you have available and whatever your preference is. I'm going to use the tool just to get the initial screw in, and then so now this can be filled up, of course, with a putty sealer, and then that will callus over. Not sure, there isn't really a rule as to how far you should space the screws apart. You'll need to just use your own initiative on this, but I'm going to space them around about 5 centimeters or 50mm apart. I think that should be adequate, not too far, and you don't want to. It's not necessary to put them too close. You would probably want to try and secure them at areas where the live part of the tree is likely to come away from the deadwood, just to keep that tension and to keep the tree as close as you can to the deadwood, because it needs to look, you're trying to create the look of a live vein, and the tree around it, the shari, as being died over many years, and so this live vein has now become much more pronounced as it has had to develop in order to take enough sap to the foliage of the tree. One thing you can make sure of is that when you're drilling, that you drill sort of straight into the tree. If it's pulling out in this direction, then you want to secure it against that direction. If it's pulling straight out this way, then you want to secure it to prevent it from moving in that direction. So trying to position the angle of your screw parallel to the force, whichever the case. So I finished removing all the cable ties and attaching the tree securely with the stainless steel screws to the deadwood. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm now going to just do a little bit of wiring, just very quickly, just to bring some of these branches into a more usable sort of position. I'm not sure if I'll use all of them, but let's rather get them into position now than rather than later when it's more difficult for them to bend. It's always advisable to clean the branches off before you start wiring so that you can remove any growth that might get trapped under the wire. In case you're wondering, these trees are your common garden juniper variety, and the deadwood that I've used, the trunk that I've used, is actually a tree that I collected that didn't make it, and so I think it's great that I can actually utilize the tree, that it can have a life after its demise, still as a bonsai tree. So I think the common name is mint julep, because when you crush the foliage, it smells a little bit like mint. So what I'm cleaning is old growth, and I'm keeping more energetic or juvenile, or you can see this stuff that is very old, and I'm rather keeping this kind of foliage. That's much better to build the tree with that, because the tree is already telling you that that's where it wants to grow. When you're at such an early stage of the development of a tree, it's always a good idea to keep more branches than what you think you're going to need, and then rather eliminate them later on when the design of the tree starts to become a little bit more cohesive. So I'm not sure if this is a branch that I'm going to keep. Maybe it gets eliminated, and maybe the canopy of the tree all happens on this side. But for the moment, I'm keeping it just in case I do need it. It's easy to cut it off later on. It's a little bit more difficult to glue it back on. And also, it's very important, the more foliage you have, the more sap flow you're going to have, which means that you're going to get more rapid healing of these holes, and also filling of any gaps between the live and the deadwood quickly. There's also something else that I want to show you that I'm very happy about. I split the live tree that I used here. I cut a significant portion off of it, split it away. And that was to get the tree far. So I didn't, in fact, I didn't actually make a groove in this tree at all. I'm just fixing the live directly onto it, but I gave myself a very flat surface by preparing the dead trunk well, and also creating a flat surface on the live tree, so that I would be able to get the characteristic swelling gin, almost like an oval shape, if you like, developing. And I'll show you a close-up in a minute of how successful that actually has been, and how quickly this has attached itself or begun to merge with the dead trunk. So this is a side view of the live and dead, and as you can see, there's very little of a gap between the two. In this area, yeah, there's a bit more of a gap. There was a depression in the trunk, so this is going to take a bit longer to fill up, but it is not visible from the front of the tree, so that's fine. You won't see that at all. But in time, it will probably either minimize or vanish as the live gains in girth and has to go somewhere and will fill up this space. I also want to mention that this tree was carved and then it was blasted, not sandblasted, but shot or bead blasted, which has given it a slight texture. So I've never done this before, so I'm not sure what the end result in a few years will be like, but it has given it a bit of a surface texture. It actually feels slightly hairy or rough, and but I think that's I'm of the opinion that might add to the character. It will smoothen with time, but this initial roughening should make it appear dirty and older quicker. And I also didn't protect it with anything. I didn't lime sulfur it, and I won't lime sulfur it probably for a number of years. And that's just to give some time for the decay to actually start happening, which will then make it look a lot more natural as well. So this tree I have now done with, and I'm going to put it back out on the bench. I'm very happy with the development over just 1 year, in fact. And I think it's going to become quite special, in my opinion. And so I'll post some more updates in the future of this tree's development, and so you can follow what I'm busy doing with it and what it looks like in the years to come. So I'm looking forward to that process. So this is the next one that I want to work on. Really just the same story as, or same procedure as the previous one. I just want to show you the extent to which this has already started to heal. Yeah, again, I split this tree, made it a lot more malleable or flexible by splitting it, and you can see how the callus is forming and forming over or bridging the gap between the live and the dead. And you can't actually see, there's no gap between the two components or parts. So I've finished this second juniper. I'm very happy with the progress so far. It's really recovered very well from the repotting and the process of fusing it or starting off the phoenix or graft or tanuki. And you can see how much growth has happened in the last year only. So all of the cable ties except this one has been removed, and stainless steel screws have again been put in. This apex will be this area which will be used as the apex in the future. Obviously it'll be reduced dramatically to about here. It's just been allowed to grow almost like an escape branch, just to help heal and develop the girth and develop the exaggerated live vein further. The same with this area. Yeah, this branch will also be removed. I'm probably going to be using this one as the branch on your right. So yeah, just going to put it back out on the bench, give it fertilizer, look after it for another year and see how it develops, and then take it further from there. This is the third tree. It's one of the smaller ones, in fact, of the 4 that I did. originally and am working on today. Obviously, at this stage, it requires a little bit of imagination in order to see the future structure of the tree. And also, as I've mentioned a couple of times already, there's a lot of sort of sacrifice or escape branches that I'm keeping on, that's just helping to strengthen the tree, to help fuse the tree to the trunk, or at least get it to fit better, mold better to the contours of the dead wood. This tree will be developed in this sort of space, in this area here. The apex as well will be reduced. At the moment it's just been thicker, it's just been allowed to grow, obviously to strengthen the tree. And then in time more growth will fill out the canopy, and hopefully we'll get some branching in this area that I can use to fill this empty space at the moment. This is a very weak branch at the moment, but it will become quite a prominent or quite an important area to fill the canopy. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get something in here, maybe just something that develops adventitiously. Alternatively, if nothing happens, then I will graft something into the space, because it's quite a long section here that doesn't have anything growing into this area. These branches are have been wired down, roughly wired down, just to get them to droop into this position, but something will be needed in this area, and these two branches are too high up on the trunk in order to bring them to this point. But it's exciting. It's each one that I'm showing you is quite different, and that was intentional. And so not everything is going to turn out to be fantabulous. But I think it'll be interesting to see how this develops over the coming years as well. And then this is the last and final one of the Tanuki that I did, and the last work completed today. So it's just this, I didn't show you the work because I'm sure by now you know what is required, but I just wanted to show you the finished today at least. If I remember correctly, some of the dead wood, so there was a couple of junipers that didn't make it after I collected them. And so these were just different sections of the same tree that I cut up and used to make these tanukis with. So you can be quite creative. I did a little bit of carving, a little bit of peeling of the wood, but all four of them were shot blasted to give it this rough, textured appearance. So this one's a little bit different. Going to be interesting to see how this one turns out. Again, just really a bit of structural wiring. A lot of imagination required to see where this tree is going, and but it's fusing very well, or it's molding very well to the trunk, and I made sure to secure it in a few strategic positions where it's where it would be the most likely to come away from the dead wood. And I did leave some of the cable ties. I didn't cut these ones. The reason for that is that it's not biting in yet. So unless it's biting in, there's no need to actually remove them, and they can continue fulfilling the role that they were put on there to begin with for. When they do start biting, and that's when I will remove them. And then the last thing I want to share with you before I finish off on this episode on follow-up of Tanuki, that work that I did last year. This is a new Tanuki that I started. This was actually an apex of a olive, which I'd collected, and I tried to root it as a cutting. It didn't unfortunately take, but I didn't give up. And so I managed to get a nice olive whip, like nice long, very flexible young olive tree, and I carved a groove into the tree, into the dead wood, and I've now laid the olive into that dead wood, and I've secured it again with cable ties, and that was done in spring. So it's now going into its first season of growth. The tree itself is growing very, very well. There's already quite a few new shoots along the trunk or along the whip, and new leaves that are coming out as well. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how this one develops. At least I didn't get to, so that's one of the joys or the nice things about Tanuki, is that if you've got an interesting piece of dead wood, perhaps it was an old bonsai tree and it died, it can be reborn as a Tanuki instead of ending up as a piece of firewood. So so I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and to see the progress, and then the next step, the next work that I did today, and how the trees are being set up for the growing season ahead that we're currently in. And maybe you feel inspired to make your own tanukis. I obviously wouldn't, well, you could do it with a couple of different species, but depending on where you are, just make sure that if you are going to expose the roots of the live tree, that you can do it at this time of the year. Otherwise, in the meantime, you can prepare. You can look for some dead wood that would be interesting, creative to work with, and also find the material that you want to use for the live tree, and prepare that so that when it is the right time to do the repotting, because that's when you would do the Tanuki as well, then you can then you have the materials on hand. You may also want to start preparing the dead wood. You could clean it up. You could do like I did, have it shot or bead blasted. Or if you're not going to do that, if you're just going to, I know some people do use sandblasting. I know Brett Simon in the previous episode, he uses sandblasting a lot. I don't have access to a booth, so bead blasting was the only resort for me. But whatever you've got access to, and if you want to try different things, like I said with this, I'm not sure what the long-term appearance of it is going to be. To me, it looks very nice, and I can only expect that the coarseness from the beads hitting the wood will soften as it's exposed and weathered over the years. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out in the coming years. But yeah, as I said, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and hope to do many more on these trees in the future, so you can see the progress. But I'm not sure what the next subject will be, but if you'd like to be notified when I post another video, please be sure to like and subscribe and follow the channel, and please do share the links, the videos with your friends, or somebody else that you might think would benefit or just enjoy watching it. So thanks very much for watching, and till next time, take care. Bye-bye.